Hi, I'm Sylvia Schnopp002, and I'm here to talk about an upcoming historical fiction that I've written. Right now, the placeholder is known as Abandoned Angels, and it talks about the Cristero Revolution of Mexico. I was interested in this book when my dad first told me the story about this revolution that caused great concern in Mexico in the late 1920s. And my book, known as Abandoned Angels, takes us back into that time frame. In 1926, the Vatican closed the churches on August 1st, 1926, for an indefinite amount of time. That meant that all the priests didn't have a job, that those lay people really at the Catholic Church, and many of them were the educators of Mexican children, didn't have a job either. And you had ranchers then trying to get goods to and from their ranches and towns. And what happened during this time is that the stage was set for a great religious persecution, but also an incredible revolt that showed that the Mexican people weren't going to stand for not having their church around. And so we fast forward then to January 3rd, 1927, when a group of ragtag Catholic soldiers decided to take up arms and fight head to toe with the federal government. It was at that point that they stormed City Hall in Arandas, Jalisco, burned City Hall, and then decided to show up on my grandfather's ranch, known as Rancho Las Cruces, in the area of Los Altos de Jalisco. Therefore, my grandfather and father were really instrumental in the war. The Catholic forces didn't have a head general per se. They had different generals that they reported to throughout the region. The gentleman that was at my grandfather's ranch was known as Victoriano El 14 Ramirez, a real legend of his time. This gentleman was a sharpshooter. He knew how to ride a horse very well, and he knew how to organize men. And he had about a group of 40 men, many who were in their teenage years and young 20s, who worked beside him and would take on the federal troops, whether it be in barrancas, out on ranches, or on main roads. They would fight at night, during the day, whatever time they were called to fight. But their whole thing was to bring back religious freedom for the Catholics in Mexico. My grandfather, his name is, or was, Juan Muñoz Álvarez del Castillo Garcia, who traces his roots back to Spain. But at this time, he was managing a family ranch of over 2,000 acres, and it sat at the crossroads of El Camino Real in Jalisco. He had a north-south passage and an east-west passage, and he also had a little hill known as Cerro Pelon, or Bald Hill. And anybody who had that hill really had strategy for the war. So when Victoriano El 14 Ramirez comes onto my grandfather's ranch, he knew the primary route for both his men, other Cristero forces, as well as the federal government. With Catholics not having the Catholic Church around, of course they couldn't have the sacraments nor the masses, and so they would have an underground church. They would celebrate Mass really early in the mornings without the federal government even seeing them, but they would also even offer the sacraments to the soldiers before they went out to fight. And this happened day after day, month after month, for almost 3 years. The Cristero Revolution brought about great change within the country, and there were many soldiers that died. I venture to say that over 200,000 people lost their lives. Many priests lost their lives. Many people who perhaps weren't even Cristero soldiers but were Catholic and or Christian also died for their faith. And it wasn't until June of 1929 that a truce was called, and the federal government then allowed the Catholic churches to reopen. But for about 3 years straight, people were persecuted unto death. Thank you.